Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Rip City Real Talk with Anthony Blaylock and Craig Moshkow. We're here. We're going to do some breaking down. We're going to talk a little bit about our Blazers, where we're at, where we're headed. A better week in the forecast this week, but we'll cover what's coming up ahead a little bit today. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to my partner Anthony, and let's talk through some of these games, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, you may have talked before. If we can go 500 or better
Mhm.
each one of these weeks that we do a recap, you got to feel pretty decent about where the team is at, especially to start the year.
Mhm.
Not as hot as I was hoping we would. I thought we'd slide into some chemistry a little bit better than some other teams with the leadership we have.
Mhm.
Eh, but at the end of the day, 5-4. We went 2-2 in this week's worth of games. The Golden State, Chicago losses, and then finished it up with 2 wins to finish out our week. So got to be happy with that. You got to take care of the weaker teams, which we've had a pretty good stretch here the last couple games,
Mhm.
and then continue to fight hard and be competitive against the better teams. Which, honestly, aside from the Clippers and really the Jazz game, I felt like we've competed. We beat the Lakers, and the Golden State game we'll talk about. But again, I felt they competed well enough considering some of the things we'll discuss. But yeah, and we'll touch base on those. So we'll start
Yeah.
with Golden State then, huh?
Yeah, Golden State. So we played them. I think you talked about it the other day. You play a team twice, right? You play Golden State the first time, we beat them. And then the second game, Curry comes out. Draymond's looking a little more comfortable. They got us in the second game. And I think Curry had 62 career high.
62 career high. The Curry Fury.
I don't know. I mean, he's kind of like Dame and Harden in a way when he gets really hot and he drops 50 plus, and CJ can do that too. But when he drops 50 plus, it's really hard to. He just went nuclear. I don't know what to do.
He's an all-time elite player. What, two-time MVP? I mean, this is what these guys are going to do. They get hot. They're going to start hitting all their shots. As soon as they start hitting their shots, you go out on them. They start driving. Seems like they can't miss. They're getting all the foul calls. It is what it is. I mean, he came out and played a hell of a game. I think he was a little sick and tired of hearing the media talk about him. Their slow start.
Mm-hmm.
And he's lately, really, look at his scoring just overall lately. He's for the most part been taken over and got them into a 5-4 spot as well after a
Yeah.
slow start. So that's going to happen, man. It's a chess game, like, right? You think about making second half adjustments, quarter to quarter adjustments. You're doing that in back to back games. You've now had a full game to look at film, what they're doing, how they're playing defense. They looked at us and did that same thing, and they came out and we're hot to start.
Yeah, it's I mean, the thing with them is so they're a quote unquote bad team because last year they didn't have any of their guys. And then this year Draymond's been hurt, Clay's been out, which he's going to be out all year. And Curry's been working his way back. He played one really good game against us, and Draymond looked good, and Pascal looked good, and a lot of their guys that can contribute, they showed up that night. The Blazers, I feel like we're a little tired. We might have been. There's no excuses, but it just didn't look like we played our best game. So, again, you play a team twice back to back, it's going to happen. I think that was we were okay with that, right? Because we were 500 at that point, and then we sort of swing into the Chicago game. So it comes back to Portland after a long road trip, and you have the Bulls. Tell me about that.
Well, I don't want to focus on the Bulls too fast. I want to touch a little more on the Golden State game because
Yeah.
some of the things I really noticed was just the inside defense. We've been talking all year about perimeter, perimeter, perimeter. Well, they don't have a lot of great shooters
Yeah.
outside of arguably the greatest shooter of all time, granted. But
Right.
the rest of the guys, I mean, Wiggins, Oubre is historically bad. We talked about after that Blazer game,
Mhm.
he was what 1 of 25 from three, and he didn't
Yeah.
shoot good against us. Granted, this game, and that's how a lot of their guys are. I mean, yeah, Wiseman could put it up, Drake can put it up, but they're not, at least not
Elite.
this year. They haven't been a 3-point threat. So
Agreed.
perimeter wise, we actually did pretty good, all things considering. I think the
Mhm.
biggest issue is we could not stop them from getting into the paint. I watched multiple times where you see Nurk and
Mhm.
in it, and they were just backing up. They were backpedaling on every time they charge, and they'd
Mhm.
stop and either pick it out or just do a little floater, where they get around them if they tried to come out, and then they drew fouls. Fouls were a huge piece of that game. I mean, I looked at the final stat and it was really actually more even than I felt it was. But in that third quarter, especially, we didn't get one foul called our way, and we're in the penalty with like 6 minutes to go, and they just kept driving and getting free throws. That slowed that game down and benefited them. All things considered, I know the final score was 15 points as far as the difference goes, but there was a couple points in the fourth quarter where we got to 7. We made it competitive until the very end, just couldn't get the stops that were needed. So
Yeah.
just to touch base on that, I mean, I know fans like, oh, well, we lost 2 in a row during that stretch, and we'll talk about Chicago in a sec. But that first game against the Golden State that we lost in
Mhm.
this week was a better indicator than I think the Chicago game was. So with that,
Sure.
now I feel like we can transition to Chicago. As It
Yeah.
was a little sketchy watching the inside defense. You want to see more out of Nurk,
Yeah.
especially. I don't expect
Agreed.
to see much out of Cantor. He's not here to be a defensive guy. Like, he's a cleanup guy. He gets the rebounds and he's a great offensive scorer, but he's not a defender. So Nurk, especially, we've been talking about it all year what his problems have been, and I think that was really rough to see him.
Mhm.
Just couldn't stop anybody. The foul trouble, he had 3 or 4 fouls at halftime or early in the third quarter at that point. So did Jones, so did Covington.
Yeah.
Just took us completely out of the game. When you have that kind of foul trouble, you can't recover. I mean, it's the way you want to play defense and be aggressive on a team that is that aggressive,
Mhm.
and you're getting fouls called on you left and right. I just think that contributed in a big way. So kind of something to keep an eye on if you're a Portland fan about our inside defense, the interior defense by the basket versus the perimeter defense, which we've already discussed, and
Yep.
it's good to see where that goes.
Yeah, perimeter defense still seems like a problem to me. So you brought it up before we even started playing games this year. We've brought it up almost every week. To me, and it's at times it feels like Derek Jones Jr. and Robert Covington would almost be better fit playing against big fours or small fours and big threes. It feels like we're struggling with the guards and the guys that can get shots up quick. I still think we have good defenders, but I'm not sure we have great on-ball defenders that can take an elite guy like Curry on the perimeter. It feels like we're getting exploited still. So,
Yeah, and
I don't know.
screens especially. I'm noticing more and more throughout this week, even in the games we won, it still looks a little rough with
Yeah.
Covington and Jones getting off those screens. They're setting screens, especially on Jones, because he typically takes on the other team's best player to get those guys open, and we are not recovering. Dame and CG are getting destroyed by the screen.
Mhm.
Covington and Jones are getting destroyed by the screen. Then these guys are getting around. They're either getting a good look at three, or they're able to have a driving lane. They kick in, everybody collapses. I can't tell you how many times I've seen open threes because everybody gets out of sorts when they get destroyed by the screen. They're moving in to try to help out, thinking these guys are going to go up with it or what have you, and then they're kicking it out to somebody who's wide open because the help had to come. And it's been the biggest defactor from us as far as perimeter defense goes. So
It has. Pick and roll has been a problem for us, and we've always been kind of a rough pick and roll team because we do the drop coverage with our center, and we don't play a lot of small ball where you have a bunch of switchability. So we do try to stick Jones on guys or Covington on a guy. We got to figure something out. I think Stotts needs to make some adjustments defensively to figure out what we're going to do to switch more efficiently. So.
Yep.
So going on to the Bulls game, I think it's worth mentioning. So the Bulls are an Eastern team, but they've been kind of bad lately. Well, they had 3 guys down due to COVID that night we played them. So Lauri Markkanen, who's probably their
a couple rotation guys, some big pieces, relatively big
good
when you
players.
consider the depth. Yeah, and
So-
we took advantage of it so early too, which is very stressful. We were up by 20 points, and I think you and me have talked about it. This game in particular, that it really attributed to the 3-point shooting. We came out more red hot. We've done this a couple games now where we've come out to start a game off with the 3-point shooting. The Golden State game was another example. Or just on fire. It seems like CJ can't miss. Dame's hitting his shots. Even Covington's been hitting his shots. And that's all fine and dandy, and that was great. That really got us up by 20. Things were looking really good. The defense was meh, but at the same time, doesn't matter because we were putting them out of sorts with our shooting. They were trying to shoot, keep into that game, and it took them out of what they like to do. Great first half.
Yeah, the first half was good, and then second half felt like a different game almost. And that does happen with the Blazers at times. There's times where we come out, the offense gets stagnant. We revert to these ISO ball tendencies. We're not whipping the ball around on the perimeter. I think that can happen at times, and I think that they need to internally recognize that and snap out of it if they can. I think we all do it, right? It happens.
Yeah, third quarter has especially been rough. But, they come out starting a little flat to start the half, and then the starters go out. Yeah. And when they're flat and they don't build upon a lead or barely hold it, then the bench is coming in at a disadvantage. The thing, I know people want to make a big deal about the Bulls game, and then rightfully so. This is a team, we kind of talked about beating the teams you should beat, and this was a team that realistically probably should have beat. But the new era of Stotts coming out and saying he wants the team to shoot more threes. CJ's averaging more 3 attempts than he has in his career, and this is great. When you talk about Jones and Covington, realistically, their only scoring is coming from threes. I mean, Jones has been driving a little more. Gets those lobs that are thrown his way, and that's fine. And that's great that he's taking advantage of those looks, but they're still kind of putting him and Covington in a corner or on the outside and saying, hey, we're going to pass you the ball. You can hit your 3. And we talked about that. They got to hit those threes if they're going to contribute offensively. and that's fine. But what happens is you're going to start playing against teams like this. And honestly, the Kings worried me a bit. We'll talk about that. We ended up,
Mhm.
that wasn't a problem, which is great on our part. But these teams that move quickly,
Yep.
the Bulls are the #1 team in the league in pace. And for casual fans, essentially what that means is when they get the ball, how fast in the shot clock they go down and put up attempts. It means they get down there quickly, they're looking to score, and they go fast. They push the ball up. When you start missing shots, and especially long shots,
Mhm.
you do not have the ability to recover on defense. I mean, missing a shot in general is tough because you're trying to now scramble back down to get yourself set up. And against normal teams and a lot of teams, that's going to be fine. You're going to have a chance to recover. But transition defense has been an issue when you play a team like this that pushes up so fast. And with the Bulls, they rebound, they're down there. They're down there looking to either hit something or drive to the rim or pass out. And that killed us, especially in the
Yeah.
third quarter. When you come out flat and you're not hitting your shots like you were in the first half, now you're missing. Now they're pushing the ball up. You're scrambling to cover a guy, rushing inside to play defense, and they're kicking it out to some shooters who started hitting their shots. And they took away that lead fast. And it's just tough. It's tough when you're going to be reliant on the 3-point ball. If you're not going to hit them when you're still trying to figure out your defense, to have to rush back and now get into a position against a team that's already down there and putting their offense into play.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I thought, we thought that Derek Jones Jr. would help a little bit with that. We thought Covington would, but it seems to be a team thing. There's just something going on where if we're missing our shots, like you said, the other team runs down, gets a quick, easy bucket. That we're very susceptible to that. So again, it's something that we should keep an eye on. And matchup wise, it could be a problem with certain teams. It's not against others who don't push the ball too hard, but we like to be a half court team. So
Right, exactly. I mean, that's how it is, defense and offense. I mean, we
yeah.
like to come down and get set up.
Yep.
We've never really been good in the transition basketball piece, fast break points. So typically, we don't win those battles, not very often at least. We talk about that.
Yep.
You hear the announcers talk about that, and the pregame guys that do the shows like, oh, fast break points. And it's a big deal because we're not a great transition defense team. We get some steals, sure. We have guys that have some length, but when teams are able to push up, well, you're building this chemistry early on and you're trying to figure out, okay, are you going to help here? Where are you going to be at? Are you going to come off your guy and help me when he drives in the middle? I expect you to be there, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's tough when you don't have a chance to get that set up and now you're scrambling. We are not a good scramble drill team when it comes to defense, or at least we haven't looked like it.
I don't think we are. Well, and so that's something to keep an eye on. Perimeter defense is probably the biggest X factor so far. In games we've played good perimeter defense, we've outshot other teams, which is what you kind of have to do. The Bulls just sort of outshot us in the second half. They made more 3-pointers than we did. They played a little bit hard. I thought they played harder than we did. They just looked like they wanted it more. At times we looked a little lost, and that was weird to see after your first game back. Also, I think if there was a crowd in Portland, I think that would have made a huge difference. It was a really close game down the stretch, a game where we were kind of losing our legs and confused a little bit. I think that the crowd could have really energized, and it is what it is.
Right. And LaVine hit that dagger. And I mean, I know he's been a better 3-point shooter lately, but man, that was
not great.
That was cold. Hats off to him. He wasn't playing good to start that game. He was, I don't remember the exact number. It was like 2 of 9 or something to start the game. And he ended up shooting pretty favorable. But yeah, wow. I mean, what can you say? He came out and hit a good shot. Dame had a chance on the other side to go down and try to do the same thing. And it just, at that point, it was a little too late. So
it'll be whatever. Yep. So yeah, people were kind of panicking after that game. I wasn't panicking as much. That's going to happen in the NBA. You're going to lose games to teams that get hot in the second half, and I think that there's things to learn. There's lessons. I was concerned with the Sacramento game, like you were, because for us they can be a really tough matchup. Just at times, it seems like De'Aaron Fox and that really fast transition offense, like you were talking about a minute ago, can give us problems. But we sort of handled the Kings last night. Did pretty well.
Yeah, the Kings and Minnesota both. I just feel like
Minnesota too.
After the Chicago game, it's like Dame flipped a switch. He was upset. They were talking about it in the media. He kind of came out and said that their energy just wasn't there, wasn't good. And I noticed a much more aggressive Dame. I watched him start driving a little bit more. I mean, his efficiency is one thing. He's been putting up shots early in games, sure, but he's always been, and we've talked about it, get other guys included into the game before he takes his own bite of the pie. And I will say this, the Minnesota game especially, he came out and was just on fire. So was CJ. We're doing what we normally do, but the biggest difference I saw in both these two games, and we've talked about it, we've seen the Twitter, we've discussed it, but Nurk, I think
Yeah.
Dame beating Nurk, and I still don't like to see the Nurk drive into the rim, getting the pass from Dame. I don't
Mhm.
care for that type of offense. I know in a pick and roll that's important,
Yeah.
but it just seems like Nurk, at least early in the season, was struggling to gather the ball, and then he would turn and just kind of
Finish.
flip it up, and he wasn't
Yeah.
slowing down like early in his career. We noticed that, and lately
Agreed.
I'm seeing him take more time. I see him get the ball, he does the extra dribble,
Mhm.
collects it, and then kind of looks to go up. And even if it's a quicker shot, it seems more controlled. And they've
Yeah.
really made an effort to get him involved. And we talked about it, and there's been discussion about the touches that he's received. His touches are up this year, and he's getting the ball more. And
Mhm.
great, but the type of shot attempts and things that he was receiving early in the year were just not either not the type of Nurk that we want to see, or he's still just a little rusty and is
Yeah.
unable to control it. And
Yeah.
now I'm seeing a little more post up game. I'm seeing him hit guys a little bit more. And when he starts get going, and we've talked about his energy levels and his focus, but he becomes a different type of player, and it transitions over to his defense. And both these games, I'm seeing him scramble after the ball, diving after the ball. He's going up and trying to block more shots
Mhm.
effectively versus just getting fouls, because he was in foul trouble a lot, especially that Golden State game.
Yep.
And I think it's just him doing a little bit too much in his own head.
Mhm.
So aside from Dame flipping that switch and the team's energy going up by itself, Nurk especially has been a throttle to the 2-game win streak that we're on.
Agreed. Yeah, I think some of it's competition too. He got kind of amped up in the Sacramento game, and I think against Minnesota he just looked better. We've already said that Nurk being the hub on offense is probably one of the more important things for our offense, especially. But defensively, like you called out earlier, we were getting beat up points in the paint wise. Against in most of our losses, I would say we probably lost the points in the paint. Right? I think you were talking about that before.
Right. 20-point difference in that Golden State game alone.
It shouldn't be like that. I mean, I know that we don't have great drivers because CJ doesn't really drive and score a lot. He does a lot more shooting. Carmelo is not going to drive a lot. He's going to shoot the ball. But at the same time, we should be close in those points in the paint, and it should be because of Cantor and Nurk. But Nurk was not finishing, and he was not gathering. Like you said, he was kind of rushing. He was kind of doing that stuff, the one-handers, the floaters. Just wasn't as polished. He's looked a lot more calm, and he's going to be one of the keys to us, being either really, really good or like just decent and can win if Dame or CJ goes nuclear.
He's our only other offensive threat on that starting unit. I mean, Jones and Covington are not meant to be offensive threats. They're meant to hit their open threes and come in and try to slow other teams down with their defense.
Mhm.
So when Nurk is on, and he's been on the last 2 games, you're seeing the results. We're
Yeah.
blowing these teams out. Minnesota was a blowout. It was great to see. We had to do it. They're one of those teams that I just, with no Carl Anthony Towns, they really don't have another identity. They tried to go through Russell early, and
Yeah.
D'Angelo's great. Don't get me wrong. I think D'Lo's an underrated guard.
Yep.
He's just been in bad situations. He kind of went to Golden State with those guys there, never really got to get into a flow. And they were 2-0 when he was playing with Carl Anthony Towns to start the year, and then Towns got hurt, and they just don't have a lot of other options. They were the youngest coaches in NBA history. I think Ryan Saunders is not a seasoned vet on the coaching
Right.
bench. So
Right.
a young team like that, and they're out of sorts, they're missing some of their star players. You have to go in there and take advantage of those games and put them away early. And we
Mhm.
put them away early. We didn't let them come back. Good win. And
Yep.
I think you could easily transition that over to the Kings, another team that, granted, they had their stars. I mean, they had their guys that are expected to carry them this season, but you're still the better team. You're the more seasoned team. You have a better core. You have the MVP candidate. You need to come out and win these games. We've talked about this stretch upcoming, and they've handled their business so far. So if you notice anything in the last 2 games, the win streak that we're on, that you're just super excited to see?
Um, I mean, Nurk and Dame both played much better. And early on in the season, CJ was playing really well and he was cooking, and he's still cooking. He's still doing fine. But I think the best version of this team is when Dame is playing alpha dog and he's literally just saying, I'm better than you and I'm going to beat you and I'm going to shoot any shot I want. I'm going to score from anywhere I want on the planet. I know that he probably feels like the best version of this team is when he doesn't have to do anything. But if you look at that Bulls game, the offense got really stagnant. And when we need a bucket, Dame's got to be the one to step up and get that bucket, I think, at times, if we
Yeah,
want to
well,
win games.
it was the stat. He didn't have a field goal until I think he hit that 3 in the fourth
With
quarter.
8
No
seconds
field
left.
goal. Got some free throws, but he didn't hit a shot. You
No,
can't
that's
have Damian Lillard on the Portland Trailblazers not getting a bucket in the second half.
yeah.
He was the top 3 in scoring last year in the second half. He was one of the highest scoring players in the entire league when it came to the third and fourth quarter especially.
Yes.
And yeah, you can't have that. I don't care
Yeah.
what the situation is. It's a close game. You lose by 3 and Dame gets one field goal up,
Yeah.
put in that entire half. No, I'm
Well,
sorry.
it's
Unacceptable.
one thing if CJ's like cooking, right? If CJ's gonna go off for 50 and Dame just knows he's hot right now and he'll give it to CJ. But that game we needed a bucket. There was lots of times where it's like, okay, this game's starting to get out of hand. We're losing momentum. Give the ball to Dame, let him run a pick and roll and generate something or ISO or whatever. Yeah, and so I think when you say more excited, Dame's look better, Nurk's look better, and the Nurk thing cannot be understated. I think casual fans know his importance, but even we are a different team when Nurk is playing well on both ends of the floor. And when he's not, and we're getting destroyed in the paint, and he's not really defensively engaged, and he's not linked up, we're just not the upper echelon team that we feel we should be. And I think that his consistency is going to determine how we do the rest of the year.
And he came out admittedly and he said, like, yeah, it's taking me some time. I'm getting there. Y'all got to be patient with me. Like, I'm working my way back from what I'm not sure because he looked fine in the bubble. But whatever. He's working his way back from whatever mental block he has in his head right now.
Yep.
And then the energy around Nurk, it seems to have fed off to the team. Watching the Kings game last night when they were building that 30-point lead, it was like the game was pretty much over.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a point in the fourth quarter where it was done, and even the Minnesota game, and they were still out there rotating, hustling. Guys are diving after balls. They weren't giving anything easy up, and that has been the biggest thing. It seems like it's clicked a gear, and you need these weaker teams to do this sometimes, especially building the chemistry. We've talked about the big C word, chemistry, and it's going to be a big factor for the first few weeks of the season until they get everything established that they want to get established. But these teams, just seeing them rush after the ball and rotate, Covington going up to try to block shots, and Jones doing dunks, and all the liveliness I'm seeing out of the team. I mean, Nurk chased the ball down last night, ended up going out of bounds off him, but he tipped the ball and dove after it, ran down there with a guard. I think it was Joseph.
Yeah.
And he dove after the ball. I mean, that is what you want to see him doing. And then when the pick and roll game is on, he's cut to the rim after that screen and Dame feeds him, or Dame drives and sees him go, and they get that connection going, and he's putting that ball in. That is where you're going to see the best version of this team. And it has been great to see them take on the Marvin Bagleys, and I don't even know who Minnesota's center was, Hernandez or
Ed Davis.
Ed Davis.
Ed Davis.
Yeah, go ahead. And Whiteside's playing 2 ex-Blazers. But great to see the energy on the team. And I hope it continues. We have some pretty easy matchups. I mean, you wouldn't think that the Raptors would be an easy matchup, but what are they, 2-6 on the year? I call it an easy matchup right now.
Right.
We'll discuss that a bit, but yeah, I would agree. I think you're right. I think seeing Dame and Nurk especially playing at their best versions of themselves, and maybe you can't say it's the best version of Dame right now, but he's drawing fouls again. He's arguing with refs. He wants his calls. I didn't see a lot of that to start the season. Some of the bigger games, sure, but it seemed like he kind of disappeared in Chicago and really turned that around and kind of got sick of the noise that he was hearing, and that's been awesome.
Yep. Well, and we watched Dame enough to know when the switch is on and when it's not. And you could just tell the first 3 or 4 games the switch just wasn't there. Maybe he was trying to do a bunch more, getting the team going. He was trying to incorporate new guys. He's trying to feed Derek Jones and Robert Covington these open looks. But when Dame's and I think he earned the respect of some of those guys too. I think the other night I watched him hit a 35-footer and Rocco just looked at him like, what was that? He was just in shock that Dame could do that. I mean, he's seen him do it as a defender, but as a teammate, it's really nice to see. So another thing that I just bring up is a lot of people are kind of complaining about what Covington is giving us offensively and what Derek Jones is not giving us offensively. These are roles that these guys have not really played. In Houston, Covington didn't really have much of an offense that they ran. They didn't run sets. Harden ran ISOs, and if a shot came his way, he'd shoot it. I'm sure he would drive sometimes, but this is a new offense for him. And Derek Jones Jr. has never really played meaningful minutes as a starter, and he certainly never played it with any of the guys on our team. So I looked up some stats and did some stuff with Robert Covington, especially right now. He's averaging 37 field goal percentage. I mean, his shooting is way down, but he's a long career guy. We have a 10-year history with him. I think that's going to continue to go up. He averages 40% field goal. He averages almost 40% three. I think people just need to chill with that and let Robert Covington continue to get comfortable.
In the last 2 games, I mean, his 3-point shooting percentage has been great. I mean, we've seen him
Yeah.
hit open look threes, and he's starting to put that in. And I think that just comes with a feeling. You start to slow down a little bit.
Right.
Jones, like I said, we've talked about Jones and his dunks. I mean, there were 2 or 3 dunks last night. One, he really wanted, and I saw him smiling afterwards. He missed
Yeah.
it, but I mean, you see that energy and that comfortability now. They're doing good on defense. They're getting down. When you start to hit your shots, again, it turns that transition defense to be better for you. So you're getting down, you're playing good defense, and then turn on offense, you're able to slow down and go back now. It doesn't feel so back and forth in the high pace, and it's allowing them to kind of get into their looks. And Nurk and CJ and Dana do their thing and then kick it out, and you're seeing the open looks from Covington, and he's hitting them. And you knew that was going to come. I mean, there's no way it was going to be this low compared to his career stats. I don't care where the situation was in Houston and Minnesota. He's been notoriously a good 3-point shooter. I mean, respectable. I think 37% on his career, which is good enough for a guy that you're going to get a lot of open looks on. So it's good to see that falling.
Yeah.
And it's good to see the energy, like I said, in the team. And the starters have been fine. You're right. People have made a big issue about our offense, but with Rocco and Jones especially, but not as big of an issue online that we're seeing about the bench and the Kanter and Melo talk. There's been a lot of debate about those two guys specifically,
Yeah.
Melo versus Trent's minutes. So I kind of want to touch on that a little bit over the last week and how
I want you to do this one, but I want you to take this one. I just want you to so what would you do if you're Stotts, and why do you think he's sticking with those two? Like, what's he hoping for?
Well, Kanter has to go in, and Kanter has to be in there over a guy like Giles just because of the rebounding. I mean, you're relying on a lot of outside shooting or just jump shots with this bench unit. Mm-hmm. Trent is going to be out there shooting threes, and hats off to him. He's been driving the ugliest looking floater layup thing that I've ever seen him do. I mean, I think he granny hooked one last night. It was sure, man. Like, you're putting it in. Go. I don't know. The whole Statue of Liberty's arm straight up, weird layup looking thing is going for him right now. But he's still overall kind of meant to be a guy that shoots the three. Hood isn't going to drive a lot. He's just been out kind of doing his thing with his 3-point shooting, which is really, he's just looked a little rusty. I'm hoping he turns it around based on what we want him to be, but whatever. And then Carmelo, we've talked about him, more of a spot up player in this point in his career, the jab step and shoot. He's not driving. So all that into consideration, with Kanter especially, like, you have to have a guy that's going to clean up some of these misses, and he's been doing that, and that's why he's still getting his minutes. He's one of the most effective rebounders in the league on the bench. I think he was top 9 in offensive rebounds or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's a great stat for a guy, and he's the only one on that list that is consistently playing minutes only on the bench. So that's why he's out there, and he's not going to give you defense. Poor guy. I mean, he tries. Listen, I see the arms go through.
He tries,
man. He's a small guy, but he's just not a defensive player. He doesn't body up very well. He doesn't time he's not a blocker. He's not a guy that's going to go up and block shots, but he does enough to disrupt enough shots to where you're like, you know what, fine. And on offense, you can't ask for a better offensive rebounder and put back guy right now with the touch that he has. Mm-hmm. That's why he's out there. I mean, he's out for the cleanup. He's the garbage man on this team in the second unit. He likes his role. He's effective with it. Great. So I see Stotts putting him in there. The big debate, I think, with a lot of people comes down more so to the Melo and Trent offensive usage, the minutes.
Sure.
A lot of the Blazer analysis are talking about that specifically, and that's where it gets a little weird. Mm-hmm. It's tough to talk about these two guys specifically and kind of how their impact is. I mean, have you noticed anything with Trent versus Melo that you want to bring up?
Yeah, I think so. I think Gary gets this recognition because we've seen him go off in the bubble, and we've seen him go off a couple times this year. He gets really hot, and then he hits like 3 or 4 threes, and everybody thinks that he's like the next Dame or CJ. And then with Melo, he'll take a little more time and he'll miss a couple shots, and people are really quick to just totally panic and freak out. But they have to realize that Melo's a really, really consistent volume scorer over time. He misses more shots than most guys, but like, he and CJ command more usage because they take more shots. And they shoot a decent percentage. So I think people tend to think of Gary as this great scorer, but like you said earlier, he's still working on driving. He's still working on his overall game. And if he's not hitting a spot up 3-point shooter, or 3-point shot, it's not a big thing for him. So I think people need to chill out. I think that where with Gary versus Melo, Gary plays a lot better defense, but they really don't like him defending guys bigger than him. They put Gary on smaller guards. He might even be our best small guard defender if you're talking about overall. So again, I think Melo's got to keep getting his shots per game. I don't think there's anyone else on our team on the bench that's gonna average 12 points per game if they want to anytime. Does
No,
that
and I was really hoping it would be Hood, or
Yeah,
even Anthony. I mean, I was really hoping for an up year for Anthony. Not seeing it. We'll talk more about that come later in the year, but it's not boding well for him to be a Blazer for very
right.
much longer. We know we picked up the option, but yeah.
Yep.
But really, the offense flows through Melo and open looks attempts for Gary Trent. They're trying to get him the 3-point shot, and he's looking for his own shot. And he's, hats off. He's been playing all right. He's had a couple big games and a couple games where he's out there 26, 27 minutes on the bench and not doing anything with it. And it's going to happen. He's
Yeah.
not the polished player that people think he is, but he's good enough to earn his shots. Melo is Melo. I mean, he's consistent. It's like you said, right now, unless Hood can get some kind of offensive game going, hitting open shots or driving or doing whatever Hood's paid $9 million a year to do.
Right.
And it's got to go through Melo. And one thing that is, we've talked about, you live and die with Melo, and he's slow. Like, he slows the entire game down. It goes to him. He jabs, looks, jabs, puts it up. And a lot of times he's been drawing fouls, which is great. It works two ways for us. And the two ways was slowing the game down is if you're in the lead, it takes away time from the other team. You start to slow that pace down. Bench players notoriously are fast-paced players. They're not the starters. They're out there trying to earn their minutes, and unless you're a vet and you're on a championship caliber team, you play against a lot of these younger teams with these younger guys that are coming in, and they're just rushing down, trying to put up a shot, trying to get their team back in the game, and doing the most with their minutes to continue to earn those minutes and maybe make a bigger contract down the road. So Melo slows that down, and that can be beneficial to us when he's on, when he's hitting those jumpers, when he's shooting that 40+% or 45+%, and he starts hitting his open threes. I've seen him hit some great threes. Like, he's looked great this year from that.
Absolutely.
And the flip side of that, when he's missing those jumpers and when he's off and he's ice cold, then he doesn't give you anything. And that's a problem, because the defense, people talked about him and Cantor. Yeah, you have no front court defense. Fine. I mean, they're not really going to go out there and be a defensive juggernaut. That's why you brought in Covington and Jones for your starters. But it's a matter of keeping the lead or barely losing the lead or building on the lead. And that's when he's on and Cantor's out there doing their thing. They look good. And I think you've seen that the last couple of games where they're not blowing the 20-point leads that the starters give them with the hot starts. They're out there just maintaining, and Melo slows down. He's getting guys in foul trouble. He was chirping with, I can't say, Valencia. I don't know what his name is. Belisa? Yeah, sure. I don't know. That guy. He was out there talking crap with them, and they were getting into it because he was drawing fouls, and that's great. And that's what you need to see. But it's weird because I feel like when he's on, Trent is not. And that's kind of the big discussion with Blazers fans, is like, who's getting the attempts? And one of these guys seems to struggle and the other guy gets going.
Yeah. Well, and only one guy can get the shots. I think it should be whoever's hotter. I agree with you that if Trent's hot, we should get him the shots. But the other thing to think about is, and the thing that people don't understand, we don't really have a secondary ball handler. So CJ plays point guard for that unit.
Point guard when Dame goes out.
We really honestly need a backup guard to play with the second unit. And when I mean a backup guard, I mean someone who can run the offense and distribute. I think if you could get Melo more spot up shots from the 3-point line and you could get Trent better looks, I think that would make a big difference in that second unit. And the defensive exposure wouldn't be nearly as bad if you were scoring more efficiently. I think people just tend to think that because CJ's out there, the offense is going to click. He doesn't take as many shots with the second unit. He tries to distribute, and it just doesn't – it's not quite there. The other thing to think about is we have like 4 or 5 front court players. They're Cantor and Nurkic, who both play center, and Nurkic is a good defender, but Cantor's not. And then at your power forward, you have to choose between – what we thought was probably going to be Zach. I think the plan was to have Z play backup power forward when Covington's out of the game, and he helps be your shot blocker, rim protector. We don't have that in the second unit, and you can't put Harry Giles in there because he's not really good at any of those things yet well enough to play him. So I think you just stick with Cantor Melo and just hope that they can keep you in games.
I mean, yeah, the offensive output from them when it's on, you're continuing to build these leads and keep it. It's going to be interesting. I still think the thing that upsets me the most so far has been Hood. I mean, I know he was missed a couple of games and he came back and he's still been a little rusty the last couple of games, but that guy's got to get going. I don't know if it's just he's not a bench player and he's just not jiving with these guys, or he's going to take a back seat because of what Blazers are doing through Carmelo and Trent and trying to get them involved more. But I really felt like I thought Hood would be a bit better. I mean, not, with Carmelo out there, you knew he wasn't going to get a lot of offense ran through him, but enough of it to consistently put up 5-7 points a game off the bench. And then you can kick out. When he gets going, that's when Trent starts getting open looks and things like that. So
He'll
I'd
figure
like
it
to
out.
see Hood play better.
Yeah, I
Personally.
think so. With Rodney, I mean, he had that gnarly injury with the Achilles, right? And so he's kind of working his way back, I think. I think we have to be patient, but the second unit he's with now is still a totally different unit than he's used to playing with. So I think they're all just figuring it out, and it's really hard to preach patience, and it's hard to do that in the NBA right now.
But it's early, that's the other
Everyone's
thing. It's
500.
early. People they need something to talk about. The media has to find something to go and, when you lose a couple games in a row like Golden State and Chicago, and
Yeah.
I mean everybody's going to come out. What's the problem with the team? What's going on? What are they doing wrong? Oh, Nurk looks terrible. Oh, Carmelo's getting too many looks. They're not giving it to Trent enough. Sure. End of the day, we're 5-4. You're going to get a good stretch of games coming up to hopefully start to iron out some of these kinks and look into that.
So yeah, I mean, I don't see anything huge. Something that was brought up in a fan question last week, and I think I know my answer, but I want your answer too. Who's the Blazers' biggest rival right now? So who do we get amped up to play against? Because we were actually really chippy in that Kings game for the first time in a long time. It looked like some of our guys were kind of fired up. Who's our biggest rival to you?
Well, yeah, I think this was Justin that asked this question.
Yeah,
I don't know if it was specific to a team or a player, but it was a good question to talk about rivalries, and it's fun. We're kind of getting off of the recap, and we'll talk about some of the things before we recap the podcast today. But to me, I think my favorite rivalry with the team is probably Denver, and I think we just that playoff series, the 7-game series with the quadruple overtime and the game 7, CJ crushing them. There seems to be a little more angst with those games. I mean, the Nurk history with Jokic and how he was the backup center on that team and didn't get the minutes. There was locker room issues, apparently. So I just think, you get a team in your division. It's not the same level of like an NFL division rivalry, but it's still fun. You play a team 4 or 5 times throughout the year and you really start to get used to them. And then I think that playoff series really just put some icing on the cake. Because there's something, I know you don't have the individual rivalries. I mean, there's not the Dame versus Beverly and George or the Dame versus Russell Westbrook, like the back and forth chatter but there's something about Nurk going against Jokic that I just love watching. He seems to be just there's that hidden just anger in him for the way that he felt he was treated by them and traded him away for a first round pick in Plumlee. I mean, come on. So to me, that's my favorite rivalry out of this current team to watch versus anybody else. I know they're struggling this year, but they're typically one of the top teams in the West, so it's always a big game when you play them.
Yeah, I think they're one. It used to be OKC, and then for a while it felt like Houston, but Houston doesn't feel like there's any like identity there. So I think the Clippers want it to be a rivalry with them. Obviously, Patrick Beverly, Paul George don't like us, and Dame and CJ don't like them either. But it just doesn't feel like I don't feel like Kawhi's invested in anything. Like I don't think Kawhi hates anyone. So it's like a 2v2 battle. I agree with you. The Utah series, we seem to match up with them, and I love watching Nurkic and Jokic go at it. It's one of my favorite things to
Denver,
watch.
but I'll correct you on that. But
Did I say Utah?
You did say Utah.
Utah doesn't hate anybody. Denver does, though. I think Denver doesn't like us. So.
Yep. That would be my favorite matchup rivalry. Whenever the Denver game comes around, it's one of those, just get your popcorn ready. And they're typically close games. The guards match up really well. I mean, Murray versus CJ or Dame and Harris. And they lost a lot of their defensive guys, which I think is attested to their 3-5 or 3-4 now, something weird like that. They're not doing very hot.
Yeah.
But definitely my favorite rivalry to watch at this current team.
There's one more thing. There was a bit of news that came out this week that said Damian Lillard wanted us to trade for Draymond Green. Was that
allegedly? Allegedly, the report came out that he was lobbying for a Draymond Green trade. Yeah, I know. I mean, you posed the question, I believe, to Danny Meringue, and he laughed at you and said, "Not with that contract." And to some extent, he's probably right, but at the same time, like, I don't know. It depends on what you have to give up. Like, I'm not opposed to Draymond Green on this team instead of Covington. And I think that's a weird thing to say, but I don't think you lose much defense. I think Green is a good defensive player. He can shoot the 3 when you need him to. But the way that he can pass when he gets the ball, if he doesn't like something, he's able to move off of it. He's used to playing with scoring guards, 3-point shooting guard.
Yes.
So he knows how to work with the passing and getting those guys in open looks and screening for them. And
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to it. If you keep
Me either.
Jones Jr. as some defensive stalwart and still be able to take down some wings, and he goes in there, he can play against pretty much any power forward, and he's lost a bit of his step. The injuries have caught up to him a little bit. He's been a little banged up lately. He's not the same guy. He's not going to score a ton for you. I mean, his scoring is just historically down, but he'll get rebounds. He'll play hard. He's an emotional guy. This is
Yep.
good and bad sometimes.
Yeah.
But you need that kind of energy when you're out there in these slow games, especially without fans. I just don't know what you give up to bring him back. The contract it's a max contract, and unless
Yep.
you're talking CJ again, we've brought this up multiple times. Unless you're trading away CJ, it is hard to make the money fit for a lot of these guys that people want to bring in. And as much as I don't know where it came from or how much a Dame's like, yeah, give me Draymond Green. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, man, like he'd be fine. But Golden State's kind of on a roll right now. They're probably not looking to move him unless things get really bad in the second half of the year. And for us, again, you're not who you trading away. Like, what are you doing to make that money work and to feasibly do that? And you would think somebody like Dame would smart enough to realize that. I mean, is he saying like, yeah, bring me a star, and what does that talk about to CJ? Like, how's his relationship there? Because that seems great, but if you're talking about I want to win, and now you start getting that motor in Dame's mind, like bring me some stars, like the Giannis thing or the Harden thing or what have you, means he's not happy with CJ. I don't know. It's all skepticism, but it's a little interesting to hear him talking about bringing stars.
Yeah. I think
Actually,
so. The actual report was it kind of got like blown out of proportion. I think Dame said that he's been like a Draymond Green fan for a few years, and that
right.
he told the Blazers to try to trade for them a few years ago or something when we had more assets and a different chemistry. I think, and then for some reason people took it as he said like this week trade for Draymond Green. That's not how it happened. But I do think that a Draymond Green, I agree with you. I think he'd be better than Covington defensively in some ways, and I think that his passing would help unlock a lot offensively. But there's just literally no feasible way to make that trade right now. I mean, you look at like Gary, and let's say you traded Gary and Zach and something like Hood, right? But why would Golden State do that? Why would they trade a stalwart piece for a few young guys that's contracts are almost over, and Rodney Hood, who is basically a wing player that they don't really need? It just we don't have what they want.
Unless you're talking about them trying to get rid of some cash and they want to go younger and they think Wiseman's their next big of the future and Draymond's maybe, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me either.
No. Not when you could use Draymond Green's name in a package to land something really big if you're Golden State. And that's why they shouldn't
bring
dump
back CJ. And again, why would they want CJ? They still have Klay Thompson, they got Wiggins, they got Oubre, they got guys that are going to play their guard positions and their wing position. And sorry, Dame. I mean, I hate to break it to you. If you didn't want Green, I don't think you're getting them.
Yeah, we could have got him like 2 years ago, but he would have cost a lot. The other thing I think going forward, you want to start with some of these games we got, just maybe like a quick hit on these games we got coming up.
To all our fans, we'll start doing some more keys of the game or types of things probably the day of the game, and we'll kind of come there and give you guys something to watch if you do follow us. If you're going to watch the game, like, hey, let's take a look at this.
Mm-hmm.
So we could touch on it real quick. I think we have Toronto up Monday, right? Tomorrow?
Yeah, let me pull it up here. So,
I want to say, no.
All right. All right. So, and the other thing I like to look at is like home road splits too. So tomorrow we play the Raptors at home, then we play the Kings on the road on Wednesday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the Pacers on Thursday. So we actually have a weird back-to-back though, because we go Kings on Wednesday, Pacers on Thursday back at home. So we do have an actual real live back-to-back Wednesday, Thursday.
Okay. So
Pacers are a tough team.
Yeah, we don't want to touch too much on this right now, but I'll start with Toronto. They're one of those teams that we talk about perimeter defense, and this is going to be a big one. They attempt just above us. They attempt more 3-pointers a game than any other team in the league. They just chuck them up. Van Fleet and Lowry, those guys they're notoriously good 3-point shooters. They got good guards that can shoot. Pascal Siakam shoots a 3. I mean, they got some guys to kind of keep an eye on. That's going to be the biggest thing, and I'll point that out in the whole keys of the game recap we'll do during the week. But they're not the same team they were. People think of the Raptors as the Kawhi Raptors that won the NBA Finals. They did okay last year, didn't really do anything in playoffs, and then this year they're 2-6 to start. Not ideal. So hopefully that's one of those games that you get them at home. They have to travel to the West Coast. It's early for them. It'll be an early game. I mean, it's from what they're used to. as far as timing goes. So it's one of those games that you hope you can just take advantage of and catch a team like that.
Yep.
Sleeping. But an interesting one. I don't know. The Raptors are a hard team to pin right now because I don't think they're a true 2-6 team when they're clicking, and we've allowed some of these teams that haven't been clicking to click against us. So.
If they shoot really well, it wouldn't surprise me if it's either a really close game or they get us, because they really do. They can light it up if they're shooting.
Defending team either. I mean, they got some okay defenders there, but they've let Ibaka go, Gasol go. They've lost a lot of their defending front court. So.
Yeah, and then Kings again. I think really simple keys to the game. Dame and Nurkic play well. CJ hit some shots. Yeah,
do the same thing you did. I mean, get involved. Try to slow that game down. They're a fast-paced team. De'Aaron Fox is probably the fastest guy in the league. You stop them from driving in on you. You kind of keep Buddy Hield in check from the 3-point line, and you should be fine. They're a young team still, but you should be fine if you just do the same things you've been doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For some reason, I'm just not scared of the matchup anymore with them. I think unless Buddy Hield goes absolutely crazy, I'm not worried about it. And then the Pacers, that's a really weird game for us. So, and it's a back-to-back.
Be honest with you, I don't know much about them. I mean, I know who they have.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're doing this year. I know they got arguably one of the best front courts in the entire NBA right now with Miles Turner and Sabonis. They block a lot of shots. They can stretch it out. Both Turner and Sabonis can hit 3-point shots. They rebound really well. So it's going to be a really tough test for Nurk, Cantor, those guys to slow them down.
They lost to the Suns last night. The Pacers are 6-3. They lost to the number 1 Western Conference 7-3 Suns. But the Pacers are going to be super solid. They do shoot a lot of threes. Oladipo's playing okay. They block a ton of shots. Yeah,
Brogdon, right? Brogdon, tough team. 6-3 for a reason. They're kind of like us. They're like the Eastern version of us. They always have they have decent players.
Yeah.
And they just continuously win games. They're always one of those teams in the East that don't do a lot in playoffs. They never make too much noise, surprisingly. But the regular season, they're tough to take down. They have a lot of good pieces, decent depth. They have 2 holidays. We always struggle against one holiday.
Boy, 2 holidays. Yeah, that's a nightmare. Justin and Jefferson.
Aaron.
Oh, yeah, Aaron.
Aaron and Justin.
I don't know the other one's name. I really don't.
No, Drew Holiday. You have Aaron Holiday. I'm pretty sure in fantasy. I feel like you should know.
I do. I have Drew and Justin. I don't know. I didn't know Aaron was a thing.
Yeah, tough team there, especially on the second of a back-to-back. So we'll temper our expectations a little bit. That's one of those games in this upcoming week that if you're a Blazers fan and you win that game, you're happy. You're stoked. You're like, I mean, the Kings, hopefully you don't exert too much energy and Dame can rest the fourth quarter again, and yay. But if you can take the back-to-back down against a tough Eastern opponent like the Pacers with the types of matchups that we're going to struggle with, you're going to hang your hat on it. If you lose, it's not going to have a back-to-back against a team that's pretty good. I mean, you're not going to be too upset about it. So we'll see.
We're feeling a lot better. I feel like in Blazer land. I think that Bulls loss rocked a lot of people, but it's still early. We still have a lot of time.
You can change everybody's perspective on things.
Jesus. It was crazy weird reading Twitter after that night. All right, man. Well, anything else before we wrap it up?
I want to let everybody know that the cat in the last video is fine. We don't have to call PETA. I was a simple scoop and drop. I promise. It sounded worse when I listened to the recording than it was. So
the full windmill.
All my followers, I promise you, she's fine. So yeah, just hang up the phone. Don't need to call animal
abuse
or whatever for animals. But otherwise, man, nothing else. I think this is a good week. We should be happy that we're 2-2 and we're 5-4 on the season. We're 7th, I think, 7th or 6th in the West right now. So you're right there in the thick of it still. And I don't think the Suns carry on with the way that they're playing throughout the year. Some of these Mavs and Denver and some of these other teams start to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think we should be thrilled. I'm hoping for a good slate of games in the upcoming week. Toronto's a weird one, but if you can beat Toronto and the Kings, lose to the Pacers, you go 2-1. And I don't know if we play Saturday or not, but either way, do we? Okay, so we'll have another game to talk about. But either way, it's a good stretch that we have to continue to take advantage of. And these are the games that we want to see the improvement on the defensive side and see the improvement in just the chemistry overall. So I'm happy for it.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting. I mean, this is the easiest part of our schedule, so we really got to take advantage of that. And I don't want to put too much pressure on it, but the guys need to start figuring it out kind of quick because it is a shortened NBA season. So we don't have a ton more time to mess around before we got to really play some of these tough teams again. So, being 500 and going through all those tough teams, now we've taken care of a team two teams we should have taken care of in Minnesota and Sacramento. So
Cool. Well, everybody, if you've made it to this point in the podcast, you listen to the entire thing, continue to like and share our videos. If we get to 100 followers following the page and liking the page on Facebook, we are going to give away some swag. So keep posting these videos, share them, get our name out there. We have 1 Twitter follower. Thanks again, Steve, if you're real. We appreciate you. But yeah, I mean, everybody that's been sharing and posting so far, we appreciate your support. We'll continue to do these things weekly, try to be a little more involved on the Facebook page and the Twitter page and stuff like that. But we appreciate everybody's support and keep pumping these out for you.
Yep. Well, hey, thanks, buddy. Talk to you soon.
All right, my guy. Appreciate your time.
Later.